Episode 28. I am not Josh Hayes. I am Chuck Manley. And that handsome fellow there is Scott Moon. Josh is off lobbying for the Dad of the Year award, so he'll be joining us in a little bit. But tonight we are joined by AK Meek. AK is a reader, reviewer, and writer, mostly speculative fiction. He lives in the South with his wonderful family and menagerie of dogs and cats. Welcome to the show, Tony.
Hey, thanks for having me on here, guys.
Absolutely. Where in the South do you live?
I live, if you imagine the states being a body, I live in the left armpit, which is, in other words, is Georgia. So
I'm right next door in the other armpit.
You're in the right armpit. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you where Kansas is on that diagram.
Yeah, so somewhere is around central Georgia in below the gnat line. So
I got you.
The deep South.
Very good. It's good stuff. We were just talking about a little bit before the show, kind of about some writing, how you got started. But Tony, would you want to tell us kind of about how you got started in writing and
oh gosh,
give us a whirl?
Yeah, I would say probably in 2009, I was over in Qatar as part of my military thing, and I was doing a lot of reading Fitzgerald, O'Connor, Oates, Updike, a lot of that literary short stories. And in the desert, you really don't have a lot going on when you're not working. So I figured, let me try to do some writing. I did. It completely sucked. So those stories that I wrote back then will probably never see the light of day whatsoever.
I think we've all got those.
And then, yeah, I realized I sucked real bad. And then I set that aside probably for about 3 years. And then I'm like, let me try science fiction. That looks a little bit easier. And then I started writing, and I got hooked up on Facebook with some other authors, and I was in the right place at the right time to get one of my short stories published in an anthology. And from there, I kind of got hooked doing it.
Outstanding. So what you say mostly speculative fiction? Is it mostly sci-fi, mostly fantasy?
Probably sci-fi. I've done a little bit in fantasy. I've written one kind of mystery thriller, but for the most part, I like the post-apocalyptic. I've done a lot of writing on robots, androids, kind of more meta kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm trying to get into military sci-fi.
We got the live chat, of course, is going crazy.
Already.
Ellen's
giving you high praise in the live chat.
Ellen says Tony's a fucking amazing writer, so we're gonna go full profanity on this.
Yeah, that's what my mom says about me too. So
yeah.
There
I like to
go.
give those big compliments for people that are important. Oh, my mom does. My mom will let you have it. Don't make her mad. So what's some of your favorite reading and stuff, or authors that you admire in the genres and speculative fiction genres?
Oh goodness! First and foremost would be Ray Bradbury. I mean, you can't. For me, that's one of the few people that I can reread their works and just reread it every single day. It seems, The Martian Chronicles, just anything of his. It's just amazing. I read that and I realize at that point how terrible I am as a writer. And so him and Philip K. Dick, those are probably my two big ones for sci-fi. So,
Philip K. Dick is the author, and I'm sure everybody knows, but he wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which became Blade Runner. And so on.
Also Man in the High Castle, and
a
lot of his stuff's been picked up for different media.
Right.
So what's your most recent credit there, Tony?
Probably my Red Rabbit Presents.
Tell us about that.
That is the first anthology that I produced. I did an open call for a couple of the submissions, and the other one I asked Nick Cole, which I know everybody in the universe knows about Nick Cole by now. He owns Amazon along with Bezos. So, but
sure
he's a great guy. We've had a little contact in the past, kind of in the periphery doing project and things. And I think he's a great guy. And so you know, I was very honored to have him contribute a story, and especially his story that he's doing. It's just amazing. His writing, I read it and I have this love-hate thing for him because I get so mad. I'm like, I wish I could write like that. I'm like, well, I really like him, but I hate him too. So, you know, there's this turmoil that goes on with me, with Nick. You know, go ahead.
Nick's one of those guys. He's never a dull moment with Nick. You know, whether you're reading his fiction or hanging out with him, the guy's truly a character, entertainer in all aspects.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. He had a story that he contributed to it. A couple of guys that I didn't know about, but I read their work and I was like, wow, this is some pretty cool stuff. So I went ahead and had them at it, and of course my own military sci-fi one that about a robot general who's 300 years old and he carries a big sword on his back. So it's fun.
Now I'm intrigued. Yeah. I'm intrigued. Yeah. Robot generals.
That's pretty cool.
I kind of was thinking the General Grievous thing from Star Wars. And I think there was so much there, you know, that I think he should have been the hero for one thing. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take that idea and make him a hero. And so,
oh, that's cool.
I went ahead and started writing about him. And this short story came out about him, that he commands a squadron of mechanized warriors, and he's kind of an attachment to a military space wing, like an Air Force wing that travels from planet to planet, and they beat down aliens and fun stuff like that. And so,
always a good time.
It is. Aliens should be bad. So the stories that say, you know, aliens know more than us and they want to stop nuclear war, and that's a bunch of crap. Aliens are bad. They need to be killed.
You know, I have the same attitude about vampires. I can't stand the angsty underwear model vampires that are so popular right now.
Sparkly.
I mean, if they're in my stories, they only sparkle if they're on fire.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I stole that from Larry Correas.
It's a good quote.
So you said that Red Rabbit was your first anthology that you put together.
Right.
Tell us about the upsides and the downsides of putting together an anthology, because we just announced our first one that we're going to try to slap together.
Yeah, I saw that. I thought that was really cool that y'all are doing that. For me, I would say, obviously, cost is a big driver. You know, how you set up the pay model for the authors, you know, that's a big driver in how big you go, or, you know, how big you don't go. In my case, I just had 3 other guys. You know, I couldn't afford very much, you know, because you still have all the other production costs. And fortunately, I did the cover myself, which I'm okay at graphic design. I think it turned out pretty decent, you know, but that's another production cost if you don't have that. So I think a downside to it is that upfront cost if you're not doing some type of royalty share, you know, and it's a big unknown.
Well, the royalty share, then you got the time invest, because then you're kind of committed to managing the royalty share for all eternity. So I'm really curious to see which way is the best way. Whether one time payment or whether you want to do royalty shares and things like that.
Yeah, so I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask you, did you do like an invitation type model, or did you just put out open call and deal with all the stuff that came in? How'd that work for you?
I did a hybrid. I would like to have one headliner, and headliner is pretty much anybody that's more popular than me, which is 99% of everybody out there. But I want to get a big name, you know, like Nick Cole was the first one. And then the next one that I have, I've got somebody else lined up that I think is a big draw also. And then, of course, I'll have a story in there. And then this last time I did an open call for the other 2 stories by S.H. Mansouri and Rhodes Brazos. They had a couple of good stories. And down the road, I may do invitation for them, or I may do open call. I'm kind of playing it by ear, getting a feel for it.
Sure.
Trying to just understand how everything works. I've been talking with some other people that have been doing anthologies also, some of the other guys that I've worked with before, like Daniel Smith. You know, he does the Tales from the Canyons of the Damned.
Right.
It's something very similar to what I'm doing. And, you know, we've talked quite a bit. We know each other, and I get a lot of advice from him, and some of the pain that he's gone through and some of the things you know, he kind of, hey, you know, be aware of this X, Y, and Z. And so then I can look at that and, you know, kind of adjust my course based on some of that input that I get from these people.
Excellent. Excellent. It's good. Always good to have somebody that's been there before. I just noticed that Josh is back.
I'm sorry about my background music.
What are you doing? I was waiting for you to start dancing or something. Like dancing around back there.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, I got about halfway through fighting the boy before I decided how he could put himself to sleep. So
sometimes that's what you got to do, you know?
Yeah.
He'll still be there when we're done with the show, I'm sure.
That's right.
I hope he'll be asleep by
then.
It'll be minimal emotional scarring. You'll be fine.
Why you lock
I appreciate that.
Why you lock the front door and they don't wander out in the street?
Hey, everybody, what's up? Good to be here. Thanks for hanging out with us. Tony, what's up, man? This is the first time we've had you on the show. I've been listening to you talking about the anthology. It's really cool. I'm really eager to read Nick's story, Conan the Cyberian. That looks really neat.
I think it's Cyberian.
Cyberian.
Yeah, it's his post-apocalyptic take on Conan with a cyborg that's like trying to find his way. And of course it's done in only a way Nick can do it. So it's pretty awesome. I was pretty excited when I read that and everything like that. So
I know they asked you a little bit about how you wanted to go about setting up the anthology. One of the questions that we talked about, one of the things we brought up right at the pre-show was it's kind of almost like your presentation of the anthology is like a magazine, like kind of a pulpy magazine feel, kind of like Tales from the Canyon of the Damned, where he does 3 or 4 every month. Authors in the issues. Is that something you're shooting with this Red Rabbit anthology, or what's the plan with it?
It's not gonna be that frequent because I like eating. So, you know, I think at a point, so I couldn't afford that. For one thing, I'm thinking right now, I want to have another one around January timeframe, maybe twice a year. But I was intentional in trying to design it kind of like a magazine because I like the pulpiness of it. You know, I like the stories that are just, you know what, I don't want the whole message fiction thing. I just want a good, entertaining story. And that's kind of what I'm gearing for. I've done a lot of my robot stuff in my anthology that I have of my own short stories is, like I said, it's a lot of the meta stuff. It's kind of deeper, heavier things. And, you know, that I enjoy that, but now I just want to focus on a robot general that goes out and kills aliens, you know.
Because that's fun.
Yeah. Because it's fun. You know, who wouldn't want to kill an alien with a big sword? I mean, I do, but that's just me.
Yeah, excellent stuff. So tell me, I'm curious about the meta stuff. You're talking about it was a little darker, and I'm not super fluent, I guess, or what do you say with metafiction and things like that. So what's the difference between just a space opera romp and some metafiction?
I think with at least with my anthology, my automatic, which is kind of the universe that I group it all under, it's where androids, you know, it's the typical android, the singularity, and they have emotions. A lot of the robots or the androids are trying to understand their emotions in a world of humans, and it has a lot of the heavier tones to it. It's still exciting, but it ended up being darker than what I thought it was going to be, I guess, as I was writing it. Maybe I was sad at the time, I don't know, but
I'm okay with dark. I'm okay with
it's good stuff, but like I said, it's got real heavy undertones to it. You know, we have robots in there that are trying to understand, like one story, for instance, there's a train derailment, and there's a couple of robots, an old robot who was a servant and a young robot, and they both have different ideas based on their experiences. And what happens is a human manipulates one of the robots to free them. at the expense of his body. So it's kind of a usual suspects kind of story, you know, where it's something that plays out at the end, but it's heavier as far as, you know, human interaction really is what they all boil down to. You know, I use androids in those senses as kind of a mirror, as an examination of our own emotions and what it means to be human, what it means to care about somebody else, and, you know, things like that. So I kind of see that as heavy, you know, weighty meta kind of things.
Yeah, very character based.
Right.
Characterization.
I've got a good, huge compliment from a longtime fan of the show, and fantastic editor Ellen Campbell, who says,
"Oh yeah,
yeah, your writing is fantastic." And coming from Ellen, Ellen's, if you were to get a review of your book, if Ellen were to read your book and she sent you a message and said, "Your book's not bad," your book is better than 90% of the stuff that's out there.
Josh, you should know, while you were putting the kid down, we went full F-bomb on that comment already.
Yeah, oh yeah,
that's it. That one's out of the gate, man.
Okay, good. That's crazy, man.
Giving me a compliment one time was something like, "I didn't have to throw your book at a wall."
Yeah.
See,
winning.
She's like local to me. I'm afraid if she ever edits anything of mine, she'll like come to my house and
come
hit
punch
me
you
with
in
it
the
or
throat.
something. Yeah, she'll just come and just neck slap, you know.
She may cut you or something
She
like
might.
that.
I mean, it's, you know, you never know.
So I'm curious about with these huge compliments from Ellen. Not to put you on the spot, but you have when you look at your Amazon page, you have a whole lineup of short stories that are in. I mean, you got at the helm,
right?
Sci-Fi Bridge anthology. You've got Canyons from the
Tales from the Canyons.
There you go. I always try to say it, and I like, unless I'm looking straight at it,
tongue twister.
You know, a lot of Sam Peralta's anthologies.
Right.
You were in Steve Bowler's anthology, so obviously you're a huge short story guy. And have you done that kind of specifically to just write short stories? Have you written some longer works?
Yeah, I have 3 or 4 novels, I think. I've got 2 more in my post-apocalyptic. One's ready for the editor. One will be ready down the road. And like I mentioned to the other guys, I'm writing currently expansion kind of that short story on General Michael, the robot general, in the Red Rabbit Presents. So a lot of times if I get burned out on a story, I'll jump to a short story of an idea, and then I'll start cranking on that a little bit. So typically I have like 2 or 3 shorts working that they're nothing specific more than just an idea I had. And so I write and see how it turns out. And if it sucks, then I'll set it aside, I guess. And then, just work on other stuff. So I kind of bounce around a lot. And I think through that, I get a lot of short stories finished that are just sitting there.
Are they all connected in any way? Are they all based in the same universe or series, or do you just kind of grab an idea and go with it?
A lot of my Android ones are in the automatic. That's the anthology that I have out. And a lot of the stories that I've written, the short stories that I've written, kind of are part of that universe. Okay. There's kind of a rough set of laws that I've already established, not as hard concrete as the 3 laws, but just some general things as far as, who created what. And I keep those in mind as I'm writing. I have one coming out in another anthology by Travis Perry. I think it's Bear Publications. It's another robot short story but in that one, nobody dies. So it's kind of different than what I've written in the past. Yeah, I know, right? It's a father and daughter kind of thing. And they're in a crash and they have to find shelter somewhere. And it's kind of a cute story, probably as cute of a story that I can write, which it turned out pretty decent.
Everybody should write one cute story.
That one is one of them.
I'm looking at Chuck and Josh, and I think they disagree. I just trying to.
I'm actually just sitting here asking myself if I could even do that. I mean, I don't know if I could write something sweet.
You got to push yourself. You know, maybe you need to write cute. You know, we all.
It's not innocent. It's cute in the sense that nobody dies by like getting their head cut off.
Right.
Nobody's. No faces are eaten in this story.
Yeah, no faces are eaten in this story.
I like monsters and shit blowing up. That's what I like.
So yeah, and that's my sixth mechanized, and that's kind of the universe that this General Michael is a part of. I'm calling it the sixth mechanized. And I wrote another short story called Jericho. It's about a young lieutenant who gets his first battle armor, and he goes into a battle, and they're fighting this big rock monster, and so, you know, his fire team and everything has to go and defeat it. So that one's pretty fun too. It's an alien and a lot of stuff blowing up and things like that.
Like a boss.
I had an idea for a well, I don't know if you'd call it cute, but a middle grade book in one of the universes, the sci-fi universes that I have created that I write in, and it was basically going to be a kind of a middle grade with the kind of like not Harry Potter in space, but that like that age group. Right. And he was going to have like some little semi-intelligent alien pet that was going to run around, and they were going to have adventures on some space station. And I don't know, I haven't got anywhere there yet. But that's about as cute as I'd go, I think. Yeah. I'm more of a alien robot sticking its hand through your throat and pulling out your spine through your mouth. Yeah, exactly. That's my typical fun time in the AM when I'm writing. How can I kill someone dramatically today?
Wow.
We got a lot of people in the live chat are like, I've never written a cute story. So I'm trying to think if I have, but we'll come back to that later. So apparently we got some Alabama fans or whatever.
Uh-oh.
Roll Tide.
No, she's not. She's just making fun of me.
Oh, right.
So if you're not, well, it actually is. The live chat is. Not this time. Sure, you're not. And Ellen Campbell, she edited my adventure fantasy story, A Song of Mercy, that was submitted to Bane, that I did not win.
I didn't win either, man. So
and
I didn't win either, but I didn't submit anything.
Wow. So what's that story about, Josh?
Well, it was basically, I don't know why I'm not picking up on the camera here. Now I'll do it. Basically, it was a short prequel to a fantasy series that I have already planned out, the first book anyway. But this short story takes place like 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 years before the main storyline, and there is a, if you want to call it, a magical essence that kind of runs through the story, and they call it the tide. And so there's a lot of references to the tide in the narrative. Well, Ellen obviously is a huge Alabama fan, so every time that I reference the tide in the narrative, she would make a comment on in the editing margins and say something about Alabama, like Roll Tide or the blah. I mean, literally, there was probably 37 Roll Tide references through the manuscript. And I got it, like the first one, I was like, oh, that's kind of clever. And the second one, I was like, yeah, that's funny. By the third one, I was like just shaking my head like, this is ridiculous. By the time I got to the last page, I was like, Ellen, you're killing me here. But it was hilarious. It was funny. And now every time that I make reference to the story, she has to throw out the Roll Tide references.
Nice.
So this anthology you put out, it was just a couple of days ago. What, about a week?
Yeah, a couple weeks now, I think.
Couple
Something
of weeks.
like that. Yeah.
And you say you're not going to do them every month, but are you starting plan? You said you have an author already for the next one. What are your plans for that? Still kind of a sci-fi one? Or are you doing different genres per anthologies? Or
I don't know. Right now, I kind of want to stick with military sci-fi probably for the next few, just because I'm enjoying writing that. So I guess one of the benefits of doing these anthologies is I can kind of steer it to what I'm liking, you know, right now. So, and the military sci-fi is you know, or space opera. The military sci-fi is pretty loose now. You know, it's really, as long as you're blowing up aliens, then that's a good thing. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I think there's probably several. You could probably differentiate military sci-fi into a couple of different categories, but there's so much variability in science fiction.
Oh yeah, yeah. I know. A while back, I kind of threw the question on my Facebook and had several people chime in as far as, you know, what denotes military sci-fi. You know, what do you interpret it as? Because I have my own ideas, but just kind of wanted to see what the general consensus was on it.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, because a lot of people
we should set the definition
sort of
right now.
mash space opera and military sci-fi into one category.
Right.
I think that space opera is the same thing as the great big, you know, fleets of ships and the whole military narrative and all that stuff, and they're not necessarily the same thing. So, what kind of responses did you get? I mean, what did people say?
A large part, if I can remember, is kind of a little while back. So, I think the big takeaway that I got from it was that military sci-fi, you generally will see a clear hierarchy of rank, some type of military organization. I kind of keyed in that was one of the big drivers to denote, you know, to delineate military sci-fi from other types of space opera and stuff. And, you know, is that you have that structure. You have, you know, if it's, you know, Army or Air Force or Navy or whatever, you have those clear ranks that, you know, chain of command, you know, that's the big thing.
Sure.
I think that I saw in it. And so in my stuff, I've kind of created a hybrid, being retired Air Force. So I've used Air Force as the main organization, but I have some Army thrown in there just because, you know, some of the Army terminology sounds a little better than Air Force stuff, which, you know.
Yeah, I kind of did the same thing with mine. I took Air Force and Marines. And
Wait a minute now, Scott.
There's like fleet,
Force,
and then there's the ground pounders. So like the Marines are the ground pounders, and then the fleet, I use Air Force ranks for all those guys.
Yeah, well, in my 6th mechanized, I have like the pilots they're driving some of the mech suits, you know. So the Air Force pilots will have the mech suits, while the ground pounders, the Army guys, will have the power armor, you know, and they all have weaponry. They all work together alongside each other. And then, of course, my robots are their own squadron that nobody really likes the robots, but, you know, they're kind of on their own there.
Why don't they like the robots? I'm curious.
Well, because back in the day, the Singularity, when that happened way back when General Michael was a young liaison robot, his creator, which was a mining operation AI, it kind of turned bad like they all do, and it almost exterminated humankind. And so back then, General Michael, he turned on his robot and essentially sided with the humans, defeated that AI, and so he was allowed to live. There was a great AI purge, and so there's limits now on all the robots, and he's one of the few sentient robots that are allowed to endure. That was 300 years in the past, and so now, as we pick up the story, we have this older robot. He's wise. He's been in every battle. You know, he's kind of that grizzled old military commander kind of guy, and people still resent robots somewhat, but they have to accept him because of what he did.
Right.
So,
well, it makes good sense, and it builds conflict into the story. And I think that's one of the things that makes stories interesting, is the more conflict on different levels.
You know, and that essentially just boils down to kind of a racial, you know, that adds a level of realism to most, you know, your big scope stories like big military space opera or sci-fi space opera, that kind of thing. You want to have those familiar elements like racial tension, religious tension, those kind of things. So that adds a certain level of verisimilitude to it that that really can pull a reader in. So that's cool.
Right.
It's AI.
Yeah, it does. And like a part of my story in that short story, and you see it play out more in the book that I'm writing now, is how the robots hate cyborgs. So early on in those battles, there were some other countries that used cyborgs. And of course, the idea of having organic and mechanical blended together, meshed together, is just, that's like blasphemy to a robot or to this general. So
probably
that whole question of racial purity, kind of.
Something to that effect. And then, of course, he's forced into a position to where he has to accept that. So that's the story that's in my Red Rabbit Presents of General Michael. So if you want to read that, it's there.
Everybody should read it.
Everybody should read that.
I think so, just because I like money, and you buy it. If you buy it, you give me money. So
love an honest man, I tell you right.
Read it, share it with your friends.
That's right. Tell everybody you know.
Yeah.
Send me fat stacks of cash.
Well, I really think that's interesting because a lot of times when you read AI characters, like either you get like the C3PO type character, or you get like an extreme logic driven system.
Yeah, like the no emotion kind of.
Right.
And so like when you have that, I never thought about having an aspect where you have a part robot organism and then a full robot organism, and how that full robot organism could have a bias to the other one. And I like that because it makes sense. It's not just we don't like you because we don't like you, because it serves the story. It actually makes sense in the overall, when you step back and go, is that a really natural thing that would happen? Yeah, probably.
Right. Yeah. And that's something I tried to think through, was that, I've written the stories to where the robot, it's very, very non-emotional, just blah, 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 blah. But I'm thinking, if a robot's lived alongside humans for 300 years, and regardless of logic, I would think that there may be some aspects of humanness that robot picks up on.
Sure.
And then you start to see that play out when he starts having some of those same emotions that he's witnessed for these hundreds of years. So I kind of try to use that also as a.
I mean, that's kind of the whole thing with the whole that transition from a technological mind to a truly sentient mind. That whole singularity thing is the emotions just kind of happen. Because they start forming their own opinions and their own, all this stuff. So yeah, all of that would play naturally into that narrative. That's pretty cool, man.
So I want to take a break and talk about the show sponsor this week. The show sponsor this episode was actually our guest last episode, and it's Rhett C Bruno, The Circuit, but it's the audiobook version, read by Jefferson Mays. Who is the same guy that read the Expanse series for audio. If you are into audiobooks, the link's in the live chat. USA Today bestseller Rhett C Bruno's debut sci-fi series is gritty space opera epic, perfect for fans of The Expanse. Earth is a dying planet. To survive, humanity founds the Circuit, a string of colonies across the solar system dedicated to mining resources vital to preserving what remains of mankind. Here, there are no heroes or villains, only those willing to do what's necessary to survive. The new Earth Tribunal, a powerful religious faction, has risen to rule the Circuit. They believe a spirit within the Earth will one day appear and welcome humanity back home. Following a string of seemingly random attacks, the Tribunal suspects its mortal enemy, the Cererians, have again rallied to challenge their absolute rule. But a new sinister threat has arisen, and it plans to bring down the Tribunal once and for all. Join an unlikely band of would-be saviors, the Tribunal's best spy, a roguish Ceresian mercenary, a subservient android, there we go again with the robots, and a disgraced general, as they are drawn into a conspiracy destined to change the circuit forever. Bruno, dun dun dun. And then the quote from the Portland Book Review says, Bruno has crafted a complex, multi-dimensional story that combines the best of his genre with age-old truths and quandaries about humanity, politics, religion, family, and yes, love. So go check it out. I can't remember, because this is a novel of several parts that were put together. So I can't remember how many parts that I've actually read. I haven't read the whole thing, but I read either the first part or the first 2 parts when it was in ebook form. Very good story. Go and pick it up. You can get it for free with a Audible credit, or it's only $24.47. And
if you've never been on Audible and you sign up, you can.
You get it for free too.
Yeah, that's true. Nice stuff with that. Good bonuses.
So go hook up Rhett, pick it up his book, and give it a listen.
Yeah, I like Rhett. He's a good guy.
Oh yeah.
And then message Rhett and say that you heard about it on the show. Then you'll think we're neat.
And then tell all your friends.
That's right. That's right.
And your dog.
Right. And then we get like
a
kickback every time somebody says something about it. Is that how it works? Or do we get that?
No, we just get to feel good.
You get the satisfaction, right?
That's right. To knowing we helped a writer make it big, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
That's good. You never know. What goes around comes around. You know, all that good karma thing, spread the love, and good things will happen.
That's it. Rising tide lifts, sinks all boats, something like that. I don't know.
Right. It lifts all boats, but
if it's the day after tomorrow.
Right. It lifts all boats to the top of the tidal wave and then smashes them on the coastline. You know. So
it's so dark. We're supposed to be cute and nice today, Scott.
We're trying to write that's my cute story is about a ship that gets smashed on the coast.
So AK, tell us a little bit about your writing process, man. Like, are you full time? Do you have a day job and you work around it? How do you get your words done?
Word.
I have a full-time job, so I have to work around that. And fortunately, my kids are older, so for the most part, you know, I have quite a bit of time that I can set and write when I'm not in school. Currently, I'm enrolled at SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design. So I'm trying to use some of that post 9/11 GI Bill that's just sitting there rotting. So I'm like, you know what? Because I had my degree when I was active duty. You know, I had my master's, and then I had on my GI Bill, and so I'm like, I can't just see letting that sit there and rot. So, you know, they essentially pay you to go to school. So I'm like, well, what do I want to do that's fun? So I'm like, you know what, I want to go get my graphic design, you know, master's. And so I enrolled in there, and I've been working on that. So that takes a lot of time, but right now it's in the summer break. So I've kind of been writing a little bit more.
Do you do most of your writing in the morning when you get up, or do you do it in the evening, or you just kind of smash it throughout the rest of throughout the day when it becomes available?
Yeah, I tried the morning thing, and it doesn't work for me. So it's usually whenever I just have some free time in the evening. My wife got me Dragon software. I've tried that. I used that a lot last year when I would go out walking, just kind of dictate. But I learned that when I'm talking, it's a lot different than when I'm sitting there at a computer typing. It's almost like it's a different voice altogether.
Yeah, so, I've had that experience too.
And I didn't realize that at first until when I was trying to clean up the recordings and everything. I'm like, it sounds like a completely different story than what I had typed, the day before. And so I'm not sure how I'm going to resolve that, or if anything. But I guess if both my hands ever get cut off, then at that point I'll probably 100% switch to Dragon software. So
might be good for at least for outlining and beating stuff out.
I like to do a hybrid where you're doing the dialogue as voice dictation, and then you're typing everything else out. Sometimes I find that's a little easier, especially when you're you're writing dialogue. Sometimes when you type, it sounds a lot more mechanical than you mean for it to sound. So like I'll type the narrative, and then if I get to a place where I'm like, I want to have them sound naturally, I'll dictate it out.
I like to use dictation in public just to make people uncomfortable. You sit in the middle of Starbucks, walk up to pay for your drink, and just start dictating a story as you're paying for your food. You know, it always goes well. People have something to talk about when they go home.
Especially in uniform, right?
Yeah, right. Oh my God, run away! Exactly.
And then he sliced his neck with a jagged.
And then he took out his robot sword and killed everyone.
And it'd be great if you're like writing in first person, like, and then I slit her throat with a jagged piece of glass, and I let her bleed out.
Blood poured over my hands.
And people are just like, what?
At least we're not erotica writers. That would probably be.
Oh Lord!
Fun.
Could you imagine?
No,
I mean,
I can't even read that stuff.
Yeah,
I
don't put any sex in my books. Just I don't see the point in frustrating myself while I'm writing it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just.
I was at a writers conference, and they said, and I was sitting in one of the things, and it was mostly romance writers, and they were talking about that topic, and they said, well, when do you know you've gone too far? And the writer had written 150 romance books, says, when you start touching yourself, you've gone too far. I was like, that's probably a good rule of thumb.
I don't even know how to follow that. How do we follow that?
I don't know, man.
So I also have a very good friend who writes erotica and whatnot, and she would send me ebook credits or audiobook credits because she knows I listen to mostly audiobooks. And some of them are pretty crazy, lots of fae, magic, and erotica and things. And I'm driving around in my car listening to it in my audiobook. I'm always afraid to roll down the windows because I don't know what people are going to think of that. So that's just a segue right on out of that, but right back into the military.
I kind of want that on a T-shirt. When you start touching yourself, you know you've gone too far.
You've gone too far. Or maybe not far enough. I don't know. Maybe that's why those genres sell. Stuff. I actually have a theory about that genre and why they do so well is because I think people skip to the parts that they like, so to speak. And in KU, that means that they page through 50 pages to get to the good stuff. Right. And so they get 50-page reads or skip into the parts you're interested in. So
maybe
that would make those genres do really well in KU.
Honestly, if you look at the readers that read, I'm going to make a comparison here that you guys are going to laugh at me about. If you look at readers for romance and you look at readers for military sci-fi or just action sci-fi, both sets of readers are looking for the exact same thing from their genre, right? And so if you read a military science fiction novel, you know you're going to get space marines and aliens and, like you're saying, cutting off aliens' heads with big swords and lots of explosions or whatever. So you're reading that. You could read the same story over and over and over again, but that's what you want to read. You read it. Same thing with romance writers. They want that. Erotica writers. They want that the same whatever aspects go into that genre. They all want that. So when you look at Amazon and you look at the sales, what are the most bought genres? It's erotica and romance, it's mystery, and it's science fiction, military science fiction. Those are the
sex and violence, baby. Sex and violence.
There you go, rock and roll. You just slip that in there someplace. What about the fans of Chuck Tingle?
No
satire. That would be erotica satire.
You can't bring it up tonight. You
crossed the line.
Hijack it.
I was not
dinosaur erotica. We're not going there tonight.
We're not going to.
Damn it. Hey, AK, when you we're talking about the business and the actual writing of writing, you don't dictate very often. How do you outline your stories? Do you write them kind of as you go with your short stories? You say you kind of go in between a whole bunch, so. Yeah. How do you keep track of all those?
The short stories are probably more pantsin than anything because generally they start as a very rough idea, and then I kind of start writing and see where it goes. With the novels, it's a little bit more outline, but it's a loose outline, and I'll have big concepts laid out, but going through the fine detail as I'm writing it, it may shift a little bit. So it's kind of a hybrid also. It's not a very rigid, okay, I've outlined every single plot point or pinch point that I need to have. I may have a rough idea in my head of where I want to take it, and then I start writing, and a lot of times something will emerge, you know, that's neat, that I kind of want to dig into a bit more. So I'm kind of adjusting as I go along.
So you mentioned plot points and pinch points, and I'm thinking is that from the book Story Engineering, or is that just your terminology? I didn't know, because I'm always curious. Yeah,
there's several books. I know K.M. Wayland. I've read a lot of her books. She has some good stuff. And there's several other ones that I've read, and kind of I grabbed all the parts that I liked and built an Excel spreadsheet that I kind of use as a map to draw out those novels. You know, I'll have little percentages to the side and how many words I need to get, but I never follow it, so a lot of good it does. But I have it there just in case. So.
But you have a general idea of kind of where you want to
and
whatnot. I was just curious because I hadn't heard anybody mention pinch points, and that's very specific to the Story Engineering book, which is a really good book.
Yeah.
Like most traditionally published books on writing, I feel spend way too much time selling their concept.
Right.
When they should just get to telling you how they think, you know, you should write better. They spend about 30% of the book talking about why this is a great idea to use this.
Right. Or the snowflake method, or all these other ways. And that's where a lot of the ones that I've got, I kind of skim through, and I'll see something that I think is cool, and I'm like, hey, I think I can incorporate that into my own little Frankenstein hybrid thingy that I do, you know. And so I grab that, you know, idea and put it in my Excel spreadsheet that I end up not following. So
do you have with all the stuff that you have going on in your life, do you have a set word count that you try to hit every day, or do you just, if you get 5 minutes here or there, you're gonna be satisfied with that?
That's usually how I do it. I tried doing I need like 2,000 words a day, but I set myself up for failure. And then I feel like, well, you know, I'm sucking. I can't meet my word count. So now I've kind of resorted to just, you know, when I have some free time, that I can type out some things. If I have my iPad, I'll use my iPad, or if I have my, you know, my iPhone, I'll do it on that, or my laptop, you know, because I use the Scrivener, and, you know, I sync it all together. And so, you know, a little bit here or there, some days maybe 300 words, some may be 100, other days, you know, it may be a couple thousand or 3,000, but eventually it all adds up. You know, that's the way I do it. I just, as long as I'm doing something, so that's what I look for.
I think that's very insightful, because in today's world, if you're an indie writer, or if you could be a traditional writer, but there is this idea that if you don't produce massive amounts of content all the time, you're falling behind. But I think that every day, a little bit every day adds up, like you said. It makes a lot. Because if you do the math on 300 words a day, or, you know, 500 or 1,000 or whatever, you start to get a lot more books produced than you would if you're a traditionally published author.
Yeah, and I think, you know, those people that can do that, that can do the 2,000 or the 5,000 or 10,000, you know, like those crazy ones like Chris Fox and stuff, you know, more power to them if they can do that. But I just know realistically I can't. You know,
and those guys don't do that every single day. Right. You know, they get in their work mode, and they knock out a book in a, you know, few weeks or whatever, and then they take a break, or they have a model where they've got other writers working for them to keep the books churning out. But I really don't believe you can sustain that kind of output and not burn out very quickly.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of those writers come from the IT industry, where they're used to, one, they type, you know, 170,000 words a minute.
Right.
But they're also used to meeting really brutal deadlines, and things like that. Whereas if you come from like a more artistic type of background, you know, the emphasis, like if you got a MFA in creative writing, your teachers are going to tell you, write when you feel the call. Only write the stuff that matters. Write for your theme and your cause and change the world.
Or the muse or
when
whatever.
the muse you. Whereas an IT or a computer programmer is like, you need to produce this by Thursday. If you don't have it done, it's your job. So get it done.
Yeah,
I think
the sweet spot is somewhere in between. You know, slow and steady is the race kind of attitude, where you do 500 or 1,000 words a day every single day. I mean, at the end of the year, that's 365,000 words. You know what I'm saying? That's a book or two.
It's like they say, flexibility is the key to air power. There you go.
There you go. I haven't heard that in a while, but there you go.
Back to military sci-fi and the chair.
Air power, space power.
Nicely.
There you go.
Nice. There you go.
There you go.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned the people that write those massive amounts of words a day, and I've talked to several who they will smash out like 10,000, 15,000 words in a day, and then their brain is completely mush for 3 days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they have to go and walk around and not even look at the computer for a week before they sit back down. Where, and even Scott and I have had conversations where he'll have a really good writing day.
I could smash some words.
Words today. I'm going to do that every day for the rest of the month. And like 7 days later,
I don't think that's reasonable. Though.
I'm cross-eyed and I can't see, and my fingers aren't working. And
well, then Josh gets to see the crash. It's a roller coaster. I'm like, I had 3 days in a row with 5,000 words. And then there's a big emotional crash when you can't maintain it. And
what's great about it now is I can like mentally prepare myself for
he knows when to turn off his phone. He's like, oh, God,
because I know he'll send me, I've had a really good day. I smashed out 8,000 words today. And so what I'll do is I'll set my calendar for 3 days. And work this. And this is Scott's crash day here. So I'm mentally prepared for
Take a day off work, buy a couple extra 6-packs, lock the door, bunker down. It's like getting ready for a tornado, because that's what we do in Kansas. You gotta get stocked up for the end of the world, whatnot.
Yeah. Hey, so I can't remember. Are you going to 20 Books to Vegas this year? I couldn't remember if it was you or somebody else that I was talking to a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, Tony.
No.
Okay. I thought I for some reason I couldn't remember. We had a conversation a couple months ago about coming on the show, but then we were talking about, I think maybe your anthology too, and I couldn't remember if we had talked about you coming to Vegas or not.
No, it's some other ruggedly handsome guy, I think, that you're talking
I'm sure
that most definitely that's what it was. Most definitely.
I'm sure that's who it was. Yeah.
If you did come, Josh would definitely pay for your drinks.
Whoa! How did this happen here?
Because I can't pay for any drinks. I'm poor. I'm broke.
I'm reserving and buying our plane tickets this week, so it's on my mind. And I'm gonna do our plane tickets much like the same way that Scott booked our first flight last year, and Scott booked our first flight last year, so we'd have like a 27-hour flight from Wichita, Kansas to Las Vegas, which I think you can drive it in less time. So I'm not sure how we had a 17.5-hour flight.
It wasn't quite that long, but it was pretty bad.
It was super long.
So you went through Germany?
I took yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There was like 7 layovers.
We had to take a layover in Frankfurt
before
we could hit Las Vegas.
That makes sense.
Where you fly over your destination like 3 times before you actually get to go there, which is about how it works. But what I did, I probably just picked what was cheap, and that was never goes well, I'm sure. But
we're getting close to the hour, and I want to make sure that AK has his links here put up. So do you have a website? And we're going to put the link into your author page too. For your books, but do you have just a website just for yourself?
akmeek.com.
Excellent.
Yeah.
akmeek.com. See, I feel like that I've hijacked this entire interview with crazy stories of whatever.
That doesn't ever happen.
No. We never go off topic. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I put his website in the live chat. It'll be in the show notes too. What do you have coming up next for you, man? You just published this anthology. What are you going to publish next?
Probably the book 2 in my post-apocalyptic 25 Bombs Fell. So that's waiting to go to Ellen, I think in October timeframe. She'll be taking that. And then hopefully I'll have this novel written on General Michael and his adventures on a planet killing aliens and doing really cool things like that.
It's interesting with the short stories that that's kind of be. Are you going to kind of repurpose them as reader magnets once that series gets going on, or?
That one I'll probably keep exclusive to Red Rabbit Presents, just to try to get people to get there. There's the other story I wrote, the Jericho. I think it was part of a giveaway that Sci-Fi Bridge was using. That's written in the same universe. That one I'm going to use as a magnet. And I've got a couple of other stories out there that I'm using as magnets also. So
very cool. Very cool. Well, everybody, if you didn't see the announcement in the Facebook group earlier, we're launching our own anthology, for better or for worse. It is a fantasy anthology. We're opening it up to, I think we're going to do 5 to 7 authors. We've got a couple of people that are in it already. We're looking to publish beginning of next year. So we've got, I think, a pretty liberal timeline for submissions.
Right, and we do like a lot of anthologies do. We have a few anchor stories that we think will give us kind of a foundation and hopefully make it really successful. Probably be the best fantasy anthology ever written in
the history of literature.
In the history of anthologies,
it will literally,
absolutely,
probably cure cancer.
Wow.
Yes. And male pattern baldness.
Yep.
Well, that's the most important thing, really.
I hope so, because I guarantee I'm going to have some blue ass hair if I can.
Yeah, so it's James McCormick is asking, hi, or epic fantasy. Yeah, so it's adventure fantasy, epic high fantasy. It's sword, sorcery, dragons, trolls, magic, whatever. We're not doing no urban fantasy, no science fiction,
romance, no erotica dinosaur.
Yeah, obviously no erotica dinosaur fiction. Just epic or high fantasy short stories. The submission deadline for the stories, for your first 500 words and then a complete synopsis, is September 1st. The reason we want a story synopsis is because we want we want to make sure that the story is complete and it goes somewhere, and there's a contained story that you're submitting.
We want to know you have a plan.
If you write an awesome synopsis and 500 word sample, and then for some reason it doesn't make it in because we do have a limited number of slots, then you didn't waste your time writing, a full 8,000 words, And plus, I think that it's a good exercise to write a good synopsis and tell the story in the synopsis form. And it makes it easier for us to read all the submissions.
Right. And I'm trying to find out, where do we put there it is.
How much over is acceptable? Yes.
Zero.
Well, anything from 8,000 to 95,000 words.
Yeah. So, we realize 6,000 to 8,000 words is short, especially for epic or high fantasy. And it really is going to just kind of depend on the story you're telling. If you don't think that you can get it done in that amount of words, send us a note and, let us know what your thoughts are on your story, and, we can work with you for sure. The tentative timeline for this is going to be, so the first 500 words and then the synopsis, or a completed story. If you have one done, then that's fine too. September 1st is the deadline. If you're wanting to submit, you don't have to have your entire story done by then, but you do have to have the first 500 words and a completed synopsis. If I think that most people that watch this show or are interested in submitting will not have a problem with that, seeing as you have a month and a half to do it. We will let the acceptees, is that right? The selectees know no later than September 17th. And then, well, no, I take that back. That's when we're going to talk about, that's when we're going to have our meeting. So it's going to be between the 18th and 20th of September is when you're going to know for sure. And then we'll do basically a November deadline for the completed manuscripts, and then we'll send them for edits in December and get it published.
I do want to cover one thing when you're done, Josh.
Okay. We'll publish beginning of next year. We don't publishing at the end of the year is problematic for a number of reasons, but we're gonna do a first year publication. It's our first one, so we wanted to give ourselves a lot of time and leeway. Well, we also wanted to give authors time to present their best material, and if it does well or if it does mediocre, then we may do another one, and we'll do some different genres and see what we can put together on a consistent basis. So yeah, Scott, what do you have?
Okay, so two things. The main focus of this is to have really great stories and get some authors some exposure and whatnot, and maybe a little bit of income. But there was a question that says if you submit a full manuscript, you need the story synopsis by September 1st. Now, we talked about this quite a bit during our meeting on the fantasy project, and I believe that, yes, we still need the synopsis, because if everybody sends us an 8,000-word completed manuscript, that can really bog us down. And also, I think that writing synopsis is one of the hardest things to do for a story, and I think we should all be doing them because they're a good skill to have. But basically, if we get lots of submissions, we can't read 100 8,000-word stories. We need the synopsis. Yeah. So even if your manuscript is done, a synopsis is still, I think, necessary. But,
I agree.
Well, yeah.
And if you have any questions, just shoot us a message on Facebook. We'll get all your questions answered.
We're flexible. We're flexible for air power, like we said earlier in the show.
Air power, space power.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Well, AK, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. Sure. I'm really excited to have you on and talk with you, and maybe next season we can have you on again as you're doing bigger and better things with your anthologies.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, guys, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Everybody that came and hung out with us in live chat, thank you guys for taking time out of your Monday night to come out and hang out with us and chat with us and spend time with us. Sorry I was late. I apologize. The next month and a half is I've got 100% dad duty, so it's just kind of a shift in my life. So
Mr. Mom, right?
Mr. Mom, that's
watch that movie to learn all the skills you need.
Just talk to me. I've been doing it for 13 years. So
that's right.
Phone a friend right there.
Cool. All right, guys. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We'll come back next week and talk about some reading. We're going to talk about some writing and, of course, everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium.
I guess I got to turn this.
Don't tell Scott about the button. Don't tell him about the button.
Don't tell him about.
Don't tell him about it.
We need to move into the post show.
You're talking about the lipstick and the beavers again.
We'll go back to being sweaty and drunk and talking about beavers.
Turn it on.